I've been avoiding making this video all day because actually it's talking about the hole in me. You know, when you grew up and there was, scapegoats often feel incomplete, as if there's a hole inside of us that we're trying to fill. Many of us filled it with drink and drugs and all the rest of it, also with love, finding that partner who we thought was the perfect fit. And maybe they were, or maybe they weren't, but there was this hole still, and that interacts with us in everyday life. If I'm carrying around a hole the whole time, if I'm aware of it, then it's painful, and even if I'm not, and if I'm not aware of it, then it's even more painful, because I only become aware of it after I've filled it with whatever it is. But when it comes to love, and when it comes to romantic love, it was explained to me that actually it's like two people who are, let's say, kind of circles, and you both merge, but when you pull apart, when the relationship ends again, it's as if one of you is no longer whole. It's an energetic exchange. That's super painful. The reason for heartbreak is that you feel, and the sadness associated with it. Sadness is that feeling that we're no longer whole again, that we've lost that part of ourselves. Well, that's exactly the same way as we grew up in the first place. That's the kind of hole we were looking to fill, and now it's back again, but it's fully emphasized because we feel as if we've lost that special someone. I've spent 3 years alone. I've single, recovering from my marriage and break up, and it's been the most incredible thing I've ever done, because it forced me, on pain of death, to look at and heal those parts of me early on that I had pushed away from myself. And I call it cutting the corners off the truth, because if I can't tell you all of the parts of me if I can't express my whole truth to you, if I can't show you exactly how much of an individual I am, and that's really hard to do when you're 4 years old, 6 years old, unless you grow up in some amazing community somewhere. We all learn, especially in this culture these days, that we have to put our best foot forward. We have to put on our best face. We can't show our inadequacies. And certainly early on, I learned that if there were certain of my inadequacies were totally off the table, and I should be ashamed of them. Okay, that's fine, but if it's coming into everyday interactions today, so if I'm talking to someone and they happen to say something and I am emotionally triggered in some way inside, if it triggers sadness or anger or shame or whatever it is, then it's probably not from that conversation. Maybe it's from early on, and I need to just ask myself, really, what is it that happened back then? What was the idea or the self-expression that I wasn't allowed? How do I feel about that self-expression these days? Can I tell you that, whatever it is? I'm getting better at it, certainly. The more I do it, the more I can become aware of those childhood wounds. And for me, there's two parts to this. It's shadow work. It's understanding where I was wounded and the pain that's still there and how it affects me in everyday life. Okay, so I call it a level of kryptonite up to here, and the necessary nourishment, self-care, self-love, nurture that needs to be up to here so that I can stay sober, for one. It's got to be higher than the kryptonite. And because nurture, for me, self-love, looking after myself, was like a foreign language, and I have had to learn that. That hasn't come easy. And now, certainly, one of the things I do, and this is why it's been so important for me to make videos, is because it's expression. An expression that I found really difficult when I was all the way up to about now. But it's got easier. And the more I speak, I'm blocking the throat chakra, telling you who I am. I don't know, there's this magic that happens. I feel better. I'm already feeling better than I was all day because I was sitting thinking I should make the video. I knew I'd feel better once I did it. I knew that as soon as I started talking, I'd unblock my throat chakra, and it seems I have. That stuff does not come easy, and it's definitely always imperfect. But the more I can allow myself to be imperfect, if you weren't allowed to be imperfect when you were a kid, if you always had to show up with your best foot forward, woo, that's some tough stuff. These days, part of my self-nurture program is allowing myself to be imperfect, to say to myself in the mirror every day, I give you permission to make as many mistakes as you need, and I'm going to love you anyway. That's like, huh. I also do some other stuff I'm going to put at the end of this video. There's some physical stuff I do every day. Actually, this one is writing backwards. It sounds weird, and you'd have definitely got burned at the stake for it 500 years ago. But it helps balance the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, which means that my emotions and my logic can run side by side rather than the emotions jumping on top of my logical brain shutting down my reasoning. Because emotional overwhelm comes from too much emotion coming at once, not being able to work out what to do, kind of not realizing what's going on in the situation. So actually, if I can balance my left and right hemispheres, what's historically called the feminine side of the brain and the masculine side of the brain, the creative and the emotional, the analytical and the logical, if I can build neural pathways between the two of those, I do that by writing backwards. Sounds weird, totally fun. Check it out now. My name is Mark, this is the Emotional Alchemist. Here comes the backwards writing weird part.
The idea behind this exercise is simple. You know how to write forwards, which is what I'm doing now. What happens when you write backwards is you use your left and right hemispheres of your brain, so you're joining them together. So when I'm doing this, I'm actually writing the letters backwards. Now, this took me a little bit of time, but it's practice. But also, as you do this, and you can absolutely do it, if I can do it, you can do it, what's going to happen is some frustration is going to come up. What that is your right brain, the emotional side of the brain, trying to, blocking the left part of the brain, the logical brain. But just, look, they're just lines on a page. We give them meaning, but actually just practice first of all by drawing an F backwards. Because if you can do that, then you can do all the rest. Actually, drawing B's backwards is a beautiful thing. And what all of this is doing is building neuro pathways between the left hemisphere of the brain and the right hemisphere of the brain. And the reason for doing it is so that when you come across situations in life which you may find overwhelming, emotionally overwhelming, you'll have more pathways between your logical brain and your emotional side of your brain, so that you'll be able to more easily work out what to do. This is amazing in high stress situations. This is another exercise. Draw circles, one with the left hand, one with the right. You are now using both sides of the brain at once. Go anti-clockwise, clockwise, whatever. But then after you've done this, so you're syncing both sides of the brain, try this. Circles with the right hand, and then try drawing a square with the left hand. This is possible. This took me a long time to learn. You can't get the stuff wrong, because even by trying it, you are increasing your those pathways. And if you find it frustrating, that's because you can't do it yet. But the whole reason, just be aware of the frustration and realize that you can do it and you will be able to do it. It's like riding a bike. I know it's a cliche, but it's like you can probably ride a push bike now, whereas or learn to swim, anything like this. Relax into it. The less you get frustrated about it, and just allow yourself, look at this, just have fun. You're syncing the left and the right brain. You can't do this stuff wrong. Just mirror on your left and the right. Whatever you need. Draw straight lines, draw curves. I think straight lines are more left brain analytical masculine, and the right and the circles are more right brain analytical creative. Draw, write, whatever you want. Have fun, because this stuff, you can't do it wrong, which is what I'm writing now. Learn to play. And if you want more suggestions like this, in the link below, you'll find my PDF that I do in the mornings, which is suggestions for more stuff like this to balance the left and the right.